The most magnetic men I've ever met had no idea they were attractive. That's actually the first sign. If you're watching this right now, questioning whether you have what it really takes, stay until the end. Because the final sign I'll reveal might completely transform how you see yourself tonight. And it's the one that changed everything for me: secret power. You know what's fascinating? When most guys think about attraction, they immediately picture some chiseled model with perfect hair and expensive clothes. But after talking with thousands of women over the past decade about what truly draws them to a man, I discovered something that shocked me. The traits that make a man genuinely magnetic have almost nothing to do with looks, money, or status. They're hidden in plain sight, in behaviors and mindsets that most men completely overlook. I remember sitting across from this billionaire tech founder at a charity gala last year. He had the designer suit, the luxury watch, the perfect smile. Everything society tells us women want, but nobody was genuinely drawn to him. Meanwhile, the event photographer, this average-looking guy with a quiet confidence, had 3 women competing for his attention by the end of the night. What did he understand that the billionaire didn't? That's exactly what we're diving into today. And look, I get it. Maybe you felt invisible around women before. Maybe you've been rejected or friend-zoned more times than you care to admit. I spent years feeling that same frustration, thinking I was missing some genetic lottery ticket or secret formula. But the truth is far more liberating than that. And it's what I'm sharing with you today. The signs I'm about to reveal aren't empty hype or surface-level tricks. They're the genuine markers of men who naturally attract others into their orbit, often without even trying. And the beautiful paradox? Once you recognize these signs in yourself, you'll stop desperately seeking validation, which makes you even more magnetic. So let's dive in. Hidden truth. Sign number 1. You're comfortable with silence. In a world where everyone's scrambling to fill every moment with noise, a man who can sit in comfortable silence possesses a rare power. Think about it. How many people do you know who get visibly uncomfortable the moment a conversation hits a natural pause? They start rambling, checking their phone, or asking random questions just to avoid that quiet space. But highly attractive men don't fear silence. They understand it's not a void that needs filling. It's a space where genuine connection often deepens. I remember watching my friend Michael at a dinner party last month. While everyone else was talking over each other, competing for attention, he simply listened. And when he did speak, the entire table leaned in. Why? Because his comfort with silence gave his words weight. This quality signals something profound to others. You're secure enough in yourself that you don't need constant external validation. You're not performing or trying to prove your value every second. That quiet self-assurance is magnetic in a way that no amount of witty banter can match. And here's what's interesting. This trait doesn't just apply to social situations. It extends to how you move through life. Do you constantly need stimulation? Always checking notifications? Always planning the next thing? Always filling your calendar? Or can you take a walk without podcasts, sit in a cafe without scrolling, or spend an evening alone with your thoughts? The ability to be present with yourself signals a deep inner security that others can sense immediately. I used to think attraction was about having the perfect thing to say at the perfect moment. But I've learned it's often about having the confidence to say nothing at all when nothing needs saying. That's the paradox. The less you grasp for attention, the more naturally it comes to you. Inner power. Sign number 2. You genuinely celebrate others' success. This might sound simple, but it's astonishingly rare. Most people's insecurities flare up when someone else is winning. They might offer congratulations on the surface, but inside, they're making comparisons, finding reasons why the other person's achievement isn't that impressive, or focusing on what they themselves lack. A truly attractive man does something different. He celebrates others without feeling diminished. He can genuinely be happy for his friend who got the promotion, the relationship, or the recognition. He doesn't interpret someone else's win as his loss because he doesn't see life as a zero-sum game. I witnessed this quality in action at a business competition last year. One contestant lost the grand prize to another entrepreneur with a similar concept. Instead of sulking or making excuses, he was the first person to approach his competitor afterward, asking genuine questions about her approach and offering connections that might help her business grow. The judges later told me they were so impressed by his reaction that they created a special mentorship opportunity just for him. This ability to celebrate others comes from a place of genuine abundance. You understand that someone else's light doesn't dim your own. In fact, by championing others, you demonstrate a security in your own path that's incredibly compelling. People notice, and they're drawn to that generosity of spirit. The beautiful irony is that men who can sincerely celebrate others often find themselves surrounded by people eager to celebrate them in return. When you're secure enough to shine the spotlight on someone else, people naturally want to redirect it back to you. Soul depth. Sign number 3. You take full ownership of your life. There's nothing more attractive than a man who refuses to play the victim card. He doesn't blame his parents, the economy, bad luck, or circumstances for where he is in life. Instead, he looks at his reality and says, "This is mine. I created this and I can create something different." This doesn't mean denying real challenges or systemic obstacles. It means refusing to use them as a permanent excuse for not evolving. It's about the mindset that says, "These are the cards I've been dealt. Now how do I play them masterfully?" I have a friend who lost everything in his divorce 5 years ago. His business, his savings, even temporary custody of his kids because of some poor decisions he made. He had every reason to be bitter. But when we met for coffee recently, he told me something profound. "I've spent a lot of time blaming her, blaming the courts, blaming myself. But at some point, I realized that story wasn't getting me anywhere. So I decided to own all of it. The good decisions, the bad ones, and everything in between. That's when things started to change." Today, he's rebuilt his business, has a healthier relationship with his children than ever before, and is dating someone who respects his journey. The transformation wasn't about changing his circumstances overnight. It was about changing his relationship to those circumstances. When you take radical responsibility for your life, you step into your power in a way that's palpable to everyone around you. You stop seeking sympathy and start commanding respect. You become a creator rather than a reactor. And women are drawn to this quality because it signals something crucial. This is a man who won't make his problems my problems. This is someone who will face life's inevitable challenges with resilience rather than resentment. This is a partner, not a project. Truth bridge. Sign number 4, you're genuinely curious about others. In a culture obsessed with being interesting, attractive men have mastered something far more powerful, being interested. They've discovered that asking thoughtful questions and truly listening to the answers creates a deeper connection than any impressive story or achievement they could share about themselves. True curiosity is different from making small talk or going through the motions of asking questions. It's about being present enough to follow the thread of what someone is sharing, to notice the subtle shifts in their expression when they talk about different topics, to remember what matters to them and circle back to it later. I was at a wedding last month where I witnessed this quality in action. The most popular guy at the reception wasn't the one telling the loudest stories or making the funniest jokes. It was this quiet groomsman who seemed to be having these intense one-on-one conversations with different guests throughout the night. When I finally got to talk with him myself, I understood why. He asked questions no one else had thought to ask, remembered details from a brief interaction we'd had during the ceremony, and made me feel like the most fascinating person in the room, just by being genuinely interested in what I had to say. This kind of attention is increasingly rare in our distracted world, which makes it all the more powerful. When you're fully present with someone, not checking your phone, not scanning the room for someone more important, not waiting for your turn to speak, you give them the gift of being seen, and people are naturally drawn to those who make them feel interesting, important, and understood. The beautiful thing about curiosity is that it can't be faked long-term. It has to come from a genuine place of wanting to understand another person's world. And that kind of authentic interest only comes when you're secure enough in yourself that you don't need every conversation to revolve around you. Quiet strength. Sign number 5. You have boundaries without barriers. There's a delicate balance that highly attractive men have mastered. They're open and vulnerable, but they also have clear boundaries. They're willing to let people in, but not at the expense of their core values or self-respect. Many men get this wrong in one of two ways. Either they have walls up, protecting themselves so completely that no one can truly connect with them, or they have no boundaries at all, bending over backward to please others at the expense of their own needs and values. The most attractive men I know do something different. They're warm and open by default, but they've defined clear lines that they won't allow others to cross. They can say no without anger, explain their boundaries without apology, and walk away from situations that don't serve them without burning bridges. I remember watching my mentor handle a difficult client situation that perfectly illustrated this quality. The client was making unreasonable demands and speaking disrespectfully to team members. Instead of either exploding in anger or capitulating to keep the peace, my mentor calmly said, "I understand this project is important to you, and we're committed to delivering excellent work, but we can only do that in an environment of mutual respect. If you'd like to continue working together, here's what that would need to look like." He then outlined his boundaries clearly and compassionately. The client actually apologized, and the relationship was preserved with new, healthier parameters. That's the power of boundaries without barriers. You remain accessible and connected, but from a place of self-respect. And paradoxically, having these clear boundaries makes people feel safer with you. They know where they stand. They know you'll be honest rather than silently resentful. They know you're choosing to be in their lives from a place of want rather than need. In romantic relationships, this quality is particularly magnetic. A man who can say, "I care about you deeply, and these are my non-negotiables," signals both emotional availability and personal strength, a rare and powerful combination. Depth current. Sign number 6. You've developed genuine competence in something meaningful. Notice I didn't say you need to be world-class or famous. I said genuine competence in something that matters to you. There's an undeniable attraction to a person who has taken the time to develop real skill and knowledge in an area they care about. This could be your profession, but it doesn't have to be. It could be woodworking, photography, cooking, martial arts, writing, gardening, anything that requires dedication, learning, and progressive mastery over time. What matters isn't the specific domain, but your relationship to it. Have you pushed through the initial excitement to reach the inevitable plateaus? Have you persisted when progress was slow? Have you developed the nuanced understanding that only comes from deep engagement with a subject or practice? I have a friend who's been making handcrafted furniture for years. He's not famous or wealthy from it. He has a regular day job in marketing. But when he talks about wood types or joinery techniques, something shifts in his presence. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing what he's talking about, from having put in the hours to develop real skill. This kind of competence is attractive on multiple levels. First, it demonstrates your ability to commit and follow through, qualities essential for any meaningful relationship. Second, it shows that you find fulfillment outside of external validation, that you have internal motivations driving you. And finally, genuine skill in any area tends to develop character qualities that serve you in all areas of life. Patience, perseverance, attention to detail, the humility to keep learning. The specific skill matters far less than what your development of it says about you. Here is a man who cares enough about something to get good at it. Here is someone who finds joy in mastery itself, not just in being praised for it. That orientation toward growth and competence is deeply attractive. Hidden River. Sign number 7. You're emotionally self-sufficient without being closed off. There's a world of difference between a man who needs constant emotional validation and one who appreciates connection but doesn't depend on it for his basic stability. The most attractive men I know have developed what I call emotional self-sufficiency, the ability to process their own feelings, regulate their own moods, and find their own center when life gets turbulent. This doesn't mean they don't share their emotions or lean on loved ones during tough times. It means they don't make their emotional well-being someone else's responsibility. They don't look to relationships to fix them or complete them. They come to the table as whole people looking to share their lives, not fill their voids. I noticed this quality in my friend David after he went through a painful breakup last year. Of course, he was hurt. He'd invested 3 years in the relationship and had been planning to propose. But instead of either suppressing his feelings or becoming emotionally dependent on his friends, he did something remarkable. He acknowledged the pain, created space to process it, therapy, journaling, long hikes, and gradually worked through it while continuing to show up fully in other areas of his life. He didn't use casual hookups to numb the pain, he didn't trauma dump on every available ear, and he didn't withdraw from life. He demonstrated a mature ability to hold his own emotional experience without it capsizing his entire life. And interestingly, within 6 months, he had met someone new. Someone who was initially attracted to precisely this emotional maturity she sensed in him. The paradox is striking. The less emotionally needy you are, the more deeply connected you can actually become. When you don't need someone else to regulate your emotional state, you're free to connect from a place of desire rather than dependency. You can be vulnerable without being burdensome. You can share your feelings without making them someone else's responsibility to fix. This quality becomes increasingly rare and therefore increasingly attractive in a culture that often conflates emotional dumping with authentic intimacy. True emotional self-sufficiency is the foundation upon which genuine intimacy can actually be built. Soul reflection. And now we come to the 8th sign, the one that changed everything for me personally. Sign number 8, you've made peace with your contradictions. The most attractive men I've ever met aren't trying to fit some one-dimensional ideal of masculinity. They're comfortable with the full spectrum of who they are, including the parts that might seem contradictory on the surface. They can be ambitious and compassionate, strong and gentle, confident and humble, disciplined and spontaneous, logical and intuitive. They don't feel the need to suppress one quality to emphasize another. They understand that human beings are naturally multifaceted, and they've stopped fighting against that reality. I struggled with this for years. I thought I needed to fit myself into a narrow definition of manhood. Always confident, always certain, always strong. I suppressed my sensitivity, my vulnerability, my doubts, my artistic interests, anything that didn't fit the mask I was trying to wear, and ironically that very suppression made me less attractive because people could sense the inauthenticity, the internal division. The turning point came during a wilderness retreat 4 years ago. Cut off from technology and surrounded by nature for 10 days, I finally had to face all the parts of myself I'd been denying. And I realized something profound. The very qualities I'd been hiding were actually sources of strength when integrated properly. My sensitivity made me more perceptive. My vulnerability created deeper connections. My doubts led to more nuanced thinking. When I stopped fighting these contradictions and started embracing the full spectrum of who I am, something remarkable happened. I actually felt more confident, not less, more centered, not more scattered, and yes, more attractive to the kind of people I actually wanted in my life. This integration isn't about abandoning traditional masculine strengths. It's about expanding your definition of strength to include qualities that might initially seem at odds. It's about understanding that true power comes not from conforming to a one-dimensional ideal, but from embracing your unique combination of qualities and contradictions. The most magnetic men I know have this quality of integrated wholeness. They're not trying to be something they're not, but they're also not using "this is just who I am" as an excuse to avoid growth. They've found that sweet spot where self-acceptance meets self-evolution, and they're comfortable inhabiting all aspects of their nature. Final truth. So let's recap the 8 signs you're much more attractive than you realize. You're comfortable with silence. You genuinely celebrate others' success. You take full ownership of your life. You're genuinely curious about others. You have boundaries without barriers. You've developed genuine competence in something meaningful. You're emotionally self-sufficient without being closed off. You've made peace with your contradictions. Now here's what I want you to understand, what I wish someone had told me years ago. These qualities aren't some inborn traits that some men naturally have and others don't. They're cultivated. They're developed through consciousness, through challenge, through failure and reflection and growth. And the beautiful truth is that simply by recognizing these qualities and their value, you've already begun developing them. Awareness is always the first step toward change. The mere fact that you've stayed with me to this point, that you're interested in developing these deeper aspects of attraction rather than just learning some surface-level techniques, speaks volumes about who you are and who you're becoming. I've seen men transform their entire lives by focusing on cultivating just one or two of these qualities. I've watched shy, insecure guys who couldn't hold eye contact become magnetic simply by learning to take ownership of their lives and developing competence in areas that matter to them. I've seen men who were lonely and bitter become surrounded by amazing people once they learned to genuinely celebrate others and develop emotional self-sufficiency. These shifts don't happen overnight, but they happen more quickly than you might imagine once you're moving in the right direction. And unlike physical traits or status symbols, these qualities only deepen with age. They compound. They become more refined and more powerful as you move through life. That's what sustainable attraction is built on, not the fleeting attention that comes from looking a certain way or projecting a certain image, but the genuine magnetic pull that emerges when you become a man who's comfortable in his own skin, clear about his values, and connected to something larger than his own ego. And here's my final thought for you, the insight that fundamentally changed how I see attraction. The qualities that make you truly magnetic are the same qualities that make you fully alive. There's no separation. Working on your attraction isn't about adding some external layer of appeal. It's about removing the internal obstacles to your natural aliveness. When you're fully present, genuinely curious, emotionally integrated, and connected to your purpose, you don't need techniques or strategies to draw people to you. Your very way of being in the world becomes a force of attraction. So tonight, I want you to look in the mirror and recognize this truth. You don't need to become someone else to be attractive. You just need to become more fully yourself, with all your strengths, vulnerabilities, and beautiful contradictions. That's the journey worth taking, and I promise you it's a journey that will transform far more than just your dating life. Thank you for staying until the end. If this message connected with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the most attractive thing about you might be the quality you've been trying to hide.